Hey, I'm Michael, and this is Michael in the Middle. It's an intergenerational relational podcast for people who are interested in better human interaction. I'm glad you're here. Hey there. It's great to welcome you back to Michael in the Middle, and I am especially honored today to be joined here on this podcast with a friend with whom I've not had a lot of up close and personal contact, but a friend that I have come to admire greatly here in the Nashville community. And that's Joe Dubin there, Big Joe on the go. If you're not following him on social media, he's a great follow on Twitter and Facebook. And Joe, welcome in, buddy. It's great to see you today.
Michael, thank you. I appreciate being asked, and I'm a big fan of yours, and I'm a big fan of Trevecca. So this was an easy yes, absolutely. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Is the red hoodie there? Is that carrying some sort of message today, or are you just it's finally cold enough to bust it out?
It's the only clean thing I had in my closet. I was out doing leaves in the yard, so. I was off today, so I was like, I got to grab that, and then I just kept it on. But yeah, if you catch me out, there's probably a 95% chance that I'm wearing a hoodie all the time. Just comfortable.
I love it. So I came to Nashville as a college student in 1978. So I've been around more or less, now for what would that be, 44 years or so.
Right.
Lived a couple other places in between, but you've been in Nashville pretty much all your life. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I've been here. There was a spell that we lived in Hawaii for a little bit but it wasn't for long. And then we came back here to high school here. I went to junior college in East Tennessee, ended up going to Sanford and playing football down there. And then I finally came back and ended up graduating from MTSU 11 years after I left high school. So I've had it was a bit of a journey to get where I needed to go. And I think it's still a journey for all of us. So I've had chances to leave, Michael, to go to other places and other cities. And somebody told me a long time ago, if it comes from God, it feels right. There's no questions. If it doesn't come from God, you have all the questions and it doesn't feel right. I had all the questions and it didn't feel right. So I never left. And so I stayed, and it's not like I missed anything anywhere else, but Nashville's home and I love it here. And who knows what the future holds, but it's home for me. So I'm a unicorn. I'm a native. There's not many of us left around here. So we the strength in numbers. There's not many around. So, but it's pretty much Nashville my whole life.
I know I've picked up across the years how you have a real affinity for the Donaldson Hermitage area. Was that kind of where you grew up, or Old Hickory, or where?
Yeah, sort of by the airport area, Priest Lake, Donaldson Hermitage. We grew up, and we had like any place. You make of it what you want, and so we had a great time growing up. I had a great childhood, had wonderful friends. We were places to cruise in Hermitage. Nobody got in trouble. Of course, this is the mid '80s. Nobody got in trouble. We all knew our places and our roles, and it was just perfect. So. You kind of grow up, you're like, I don't want to stay here. But the older you get and, with the college away game, you travel around, you realize that, there's some places that you really enjoy that feel comfortable, and that's your hometown. And so, I am from Nashville, but more importantly, Donaldson, Hermitage, Old Hickory, parts of Mount Juliet is where I grew up and places that I love. So they're very near and dear to me.
What are your favorite spots? I'm thinking of long-time places over in Donaldson. When I was a younger man, I worked for Commerce Union Bank for a little while.
Yeah.
And we played. I played with they recruited me to play on the softball team, and we were out there at Two Rivers next door to McGavock, and the guys always wanted to go to Fletcher's after the game, and that place is still standing. I mean, they've taken some knocks, but isn't it cool to see places that have endured like that over time?
It is, especially in our backyard. I wrote last week, somebody asked me to explain Fletcher's, and I said very simply, I can't. I mean, I can't explain them. It's not a 5-star restaurant. It's nothing you're going to see on, the great cooking TV shows. You're not going to. In fact, the food's probably a little bit above average, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a special place for so many people. It's not about the food. It's about the ambiance and the people you'll see and the memories you've had. I mean, I've got all kind of memories throughout the years of going to that place with friends, some who've passed away now. And it just feels good going in there, seeing people, knowing what you're going to do, knowing what you're going to see. And again, it's hard to explain about, I went to college with a guy who was a big fisherman. He lived down in Alabama. We went to this great place where they had catfish. And Mike, I'll tell you, we went to this restaurant. It was awful. It was the worst catfish. And I said, I don't know how you do that. It's just, he goes, what'd you think? I said, it's not good. I don't know how you like this. He goes, well, I understand to me how good it is. I'm sorry you don't understand the same way. I said, that's fine. It's okay. And I think that's what Fletcher's does for a lot of people in Donaldson's. Like, yeah, it's not the greatest, but, to us it is. And again, it's very hard to explain why this is if you've not experienced that ambiance throughout the years of seeing people, and when you're down and you go there and eat and you run into an old friend, it's just really special in so many ways. So it's good to see that place going and going as strong as ever too, which is really, really good.
Yeah. I had that kind of relationship with El Chico over on Murfreesboro Road. And, I mean, I thought the food was great, but once it closed, I realized that what I was missing the most was the people that had been serving me there across, 40 plus years and finding that, and I wasn't going to see Claudia or Rosa or Michael or Jay or Alicia if I didn't know the server at El Chico, it was because they had just started.
Well, they closed the one in Rivergate, and that crushed me too. That I spent a lot of time the one in Rivergate. So when you see little things like that get taken away, and it's happening, Michael, all the time in Nashville, and it just guts you. I mean, it's like, oh, I remember that place there, or I remember that place there, and and all too often, it gets taken away. Then a year later, you go by there, and what took that place of the place you loved is gone too. So it's a tough pill to swallow. But to see Fletcher's thriving like that really makes me happy. And and I'm not invested in the company. I don't know Gary Fletcher, the owner, that great. I just know what that place has meant to me forever. And so it's I hope it stays around, that my son can experience his son for many, many, many years.
Yeah. I'm not angry about the fact that Edley's Barbecue showed up over there, because that's pretty good food.
Yeah, right. So we've got an Edley's, and now there's a whole new plan the next 3 to 5 years to revitalize Donaldson, and some really cannot stand it, and others like, bring it on. And so we'll see what happens. But overall, it looks good for Donaldson to be kind of the next burgeoning place in Davidson County.
That gives me maybe a little jumping off point. Tell me about your family a little bit as you were growing up and going to school here, and some of the things that you remember. I don't want to delve too deeply into it more than you want to, but I was really taken by the blog that you shared yesterday on the anniversary of your mom's passing. How many years has it been now since she's been gone?
11 years, and it's funny, you think about 11 years, like, wow, I remember the night she passed away and all that. And, you remember the days afterwards and the funeral and all that goes on. And then, blink of an eye, it's 11 years. It's just one of those things where at the moment you wish you could get away from it all, because the visitation, the funeral, and everything else that happens, because you're not prepared for it. And then you fast forward, it's been 11 years. So yeah, yesterday, my birthday was October 25th. So every year on my birthday, she would call me at 1:09 p.m. I mean, Michael, this happened my entire, when I was in college, she'd leave a message on the answer machine at 1:09. When we got cell phones, she would call me. So she had Alzheimer's, and, whether it's dementia, Alzheimer's, or whatever, any kind of thing like that, it's all the same. All right. We could compartmentalize all of it and put it in different areas.
Right.
It's still awful. It's just still awful. So, there were months, she had no idea who I was, no clue. And so, your birthday rolls around, you're thinking, man, I enjoyed all those calls. And I just never forget, I was at home, I was off work, and my phone rang from her, because she had a cell phone we had her in a nursing home, which is another awful story in itself. And I picked the phone up, and she was as clear and concise as like nothing was wrong. And happy birthday, and I miss you, and come see me, and I'll see you later on. Love you. It was like, wow. And then 8 months later, she was gone. I mean, so it's one of those things where, I tell people in the midst of this massive, awful storm, God sends you hope. It's there, it sends you hope. And I'll never forget that phone call as long as I live. And I was, I wrote the story and didn't think anybody would read it. And it's really touched a lot of people, which I'm really grateful for. But it just shows that there is all this hope that you have in the middle of this. And you just got to recognize it and see it. And it was wonderful. So, yeah, she was a warrior. She was a single mom. And I've wrote this about, too. It's like my relationship with my father was awful. I didn't talk to him for 35 years before he died. He died 3 years ago, and I couldn't have cared less. And people are like, well, you should forgive and forget. And I'm like, it's easy to say. It's easy to say you should forgive and forget. If you had not been there when the light guy comes to turn off your lights because he disappeared for weeks at a time and didn't pay the bill, and my mom is a single mom trying to struggle, it's easy to say forgive and forget when you have to borrow money to eat. I'm not saying I had the worst childhood, but there are moments that you don't forget. And had he been, even things happen between parents, right? They get divorced all the time. I've been through 2 divorces, and I'm not proud of that. But, you still have responsibility to your children. And, he did not do that. And it was, I would say it was tough. I don't know what I missed because he was never around, Michael. I don't know what I missed in life. But it made my relationship with my mother really, really close. And I wrote about this. I wrote a story called And in Return. And I talk about how awful my dad was growing up. I mean, he left me at a billiards hall for 6 hours one day on a Sunday when he didn't come. But I was like 9 years old, and I vividly remember that. Some guy teaching me to play pool. He shows back up 6 hours later with another woman who's not my mom. And so, and then, I don't see him for like a year, and he shows up at a basketball game I'm playing in, and he's drunk, and he's yelling at me to rebound. And I didn't know who the guy was. So you look at all this, and I wrote the story, like, here's what happened to us. And then in the middle of the story, I said, but in the middle of the story, and in return, God gave me something. And he gave me this beautiful woman I called my mother. And, I talk about things, I cracked my sternum in a football game one time, and I thought in college, I thought I was going to die. She drives all night to make sure I don't die, which I wasn't going to die. And just other things about my life that she was always there. And so I never lacked for anything because she was always there. So it made our relationship closer and everything that we did and went through. And so it was, when she got sick, it was tough because I was powerless to help. I couldn't, I could move a lot of weight in the gym, but I couldn't help her. And it was just so, humiliating and tough on me. But we had this great relationship where we just kind of took care of each other for so long. And so what it did with my kids, and I tell people, it's like, oh, you're a great dad. Thank you very much. But what I did is that I did a 180 of what my father did. And my greatest fear is that my kids grow up feeling about me the way I felt about my dad. And I can't do that. And so it's being involved. And I tell people, I'm addicted. I'm addicted to my kids. I'm addicted because my mom was so wonderful and, giving of herself and taking care of me and make sure we had everything. So, I've become her in so many ways of taking care of my kids and just being there for them. And, one of the greatest things my daughter said one time when they asked about her dad, and she said, he's always there, and that's, to me, that spoke volumes of a lot of things of always being there. So it was but I had a lot of friends that grew up in divorced households, and it's unfortunate the way it is, but, and that's my story. And, it's like, I don't want like, oh, it's so bad. I didn't want that because I didn't want for anything, if that makes sense. I had everything that I needed. I didn't know anymore. I had great friends. I had a great mom. I got a great brother and sister. So having the dad who never was around, I didn't know what I was missing. So when he passed away, I wrote this story. Some people wrote to me and said, well, you have to forgive and forget and stop killing that hate around. And then a real good friend wrote back to me and said, you feel the way you want to feel. And you live the story. And it's crazy because my father's got 2 aunts who I haven't talked to forever. And so when he passed away, I went to the funeral and they wouldn't speak to me. And finally, one came to the parking lot and said, I shouldn't be talking to you after all this. I'm like, well, how am I the bad guy? How am I? Well, they're like, well, your dad wasn't as bad as you make him out to be. I'm like, I lived the story. You weren't, I don't know what he's telling you. I lived the story with that. So it was really odd at the funeral when he passed away. I only stayed like 5 minutes. But again, it goes back to having this wonderful mom, this strength, this bond. I go see her all the time at the funeral home, and I have this Bible verse, I thank God upon every remembrance of you. And it's just wonderful that I've got her in my spirit, my soul forever. And Mike, I get angry sometimes because she put up, she gave herself for us and for me to live a great life, and I think about it, what if she wanted to say, you know what, because he doesn't, the dad, my dad doesn't want to do this, maybe I don't want to do it either. Then what would have happened to me? I get shuttled to a foster home, or who knows where I would have gone. But she never quit. And so that's what I take from her. I never quit on anything just because she never quit. And she was wonderful. And I miss her every day, but I know that her spirit lives on in me and in so many people around that knew her. So it's a good thing. It was tough for a while. There were moments like we went and saw her on Mother's Day, probably 2 months before she passed. And my son was 5 years old, and he was dancing and showing all these dance moves. And my mom grabbed my hand and said, excuse me, sir, what's that young man's name? And that just, that's a gut punch. That just devastates you in so many ways. It's just an awful, awful disease. But I have so many great memories of her growing up and everything that it really, really good. And lastly, and I wrote about this too as well, my son will never know her voice, and that hurts in a lot of ways. She'll never know that warm, love you voice, or that, you're in trouble voice and all that. But, but I had it for me for a long time. I know there's a lot of people who their parents passed at an early age, and I hate that for them for so much because they missed out on so much. But I'm good and things are better. And I thank God that she was my mom.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. So tell me about your kids.
Well, my she's a nurse. She's an RN in Mississippi, and she got married last year and grounded in faith and the Lord. And so she's met a wonderful man, and she's living a great life. And I'll never forget when somebody asked me how the wedding was, walking your daughter down the aisle. And so I walked her down the aisle, and we got about 5 feet away. And I looked up at her husband. He had cried so much, Michael, that the front of his suit was soaking wet. and I'm looking at this young man who has this just vast love for my daughter. And it's just an amazing feeling of, I'm giving her away to this guy who's going to take care of her and thinks that she hung the moon. And it was a beautiful thing. My son, he goes to sophomore, he's at DCA, great kid. He's active in a lot of things. He played football. He's running track. He's playing track. He's not running. He's not good enough to run. He's a big kid, and he's in choir and theater, and he's just a good boy. And I'm blessed. No trouble. He's just a good kid, and he's a 180 for me growing up, which is really good. So I know that he's got a bright future ahead of him. And my thing with him was, we've had these long talks, and I was like, as long as you prioritize your life, as long as you love Jesus first and know him and know what he's about and dedicate your life to him, and then your family's next and friends that, you'll be fine. And that's it. And he was like, is that all? I was like, there's all these obstacles on the way, but as long as you keep those things prioritized, you'll be fine. I mean, you will be fine. And so he's really embraced that. He's in a great school with great people. And he goes to a great life team group on the weekends. So we're really fortunate for all that.
That's fantastic. Donaldson Christian's a neat place. And I'm sure Dennis Goodwin, who's been over there for all these decades. He's we should have known that Dennis would end up being a pretty good athletic administrator. He kind of ran our intramural association as a student over here.
Oh, I didn't know that.
In school, his wife Sherry was a part of our class of 1982, and Dennis maybe a year older than that. But we've known a lot of DCA people across the years, and a lot of good connections between Trevecca and DCA, as well as other schools around town. So how did you end up in broadcasting? I mean, is that what you studied when you were in college? Did you start doing that before you finished the degree? What?
Yeah. So I wanted to be a football coach. My best friend's the head football coach at Eastern Kentucky University, and he was coaching at Cumberland at the time. And I went back to school to get my degree. And so I took 67 hours in a year at MTSU to graduate, and I was going to double major in history and journalism, and because I was going to be a high school football coach.
Yeah.
So I met this one guy who worked at Channel 2, and we were talking one day, and he was telling me about his job and all he does and how no day's different and it's exciting. I was like, man, I'd like to do this. So I had to do an internship. So I interned at Channel 2 in the summer of 1996. I could intern anywhere I wanted to. Back then, there were 3 stations, 2, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
So I called Channel 4 to intern with Rudy, and Rudy Kalis had interns lined up for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
It was just, I was like, well, dadgummit. So I called Channel 2. They were in transition, and they didn't have a sports guy at the time. The sports guy they had, so he's like, yeah, come on in, do whatever you want. So I went in there, and then I was there a few weeks, and John Dwyer showed up at Channel 2, and then I kind of worked under him for a while, and he was fantastic, just showing how to work, how to write, how to interview people, how to do this and do that. And so I really had a good
how to dress. I mean,
yeah,
great dresser.
Right? He was a great dresser. So that was good. So I had John as kind of a bouncing point off of me. And then my internship came up, and a guy at work said, one of the managers said, well, hey, your internship's up. And I said, yes, sir. He's like, well, we can't let that happen because I'm going to get you a job here. So I got a job. I was working at Channel 2. I was doing the noon show. I was an editor. I worked from 8 to 1. I made $6 an hour. I would leave at 1 o'clock and drive to a healthcare company in Franklin that I worked at from 2 to 10. Everyone just inputting data, and there were only 6 of us at the time. And this company ended up, so this was 96, 97 in there. This company, so they offered me a job, you go to hospitals and check their medical records, and Michael, it just sounded so awful. I was like, I can't do this job. Meanwhile, here's Channel 2. I'm in the door. I'm shooting football games. I'm getting to write. It's a lot of fun. So I went to Channel 2. Fast forward, in 2014, that healthcare company in Franklin called AIM Healthcare sold to a German company for something like $850 million. So the people that started there got well compensated. But I don't look at it like, look at all that money you lost. Well, no, I mean, I didn't lose any. To lose something, you have to have had it. I didn't have that much, So anyway, so I started at Channel 2, and I worked my way up. So we would do these Titans preseason games, and we would do promotions like Titans versus the Bears Saturday night, and it was really boring and generic. And I went to the guy that promotions guy at the time, and I kept writing him scripts, and they never use them. Finally, he called me. He's like, hey, we're going to use one of your scripts for the simple reason that you'll stop giving me scripts. And I was like, perfect. So we did this take on the Blair Witch Project. The Titans were playing the playoffs with the Jaguars, and it got real received. It got nominated for this huge award for ABC. And the promotions guy was like, you get to do the rest of them. So we did the next couple of years, did more and more. I was doing writing, more camera work, and we ended up winning this huge award called the Alpha Award from ABC over a promotion that we did. And my GM recognized it, and one thing led to another. The Big Joe thing kind of evolved, and I got on the morning show over there. This was 2003, and it just took off. I mean, people want to see their community in a different light that's not negative.
Yeah.
So I would go out and just do all these fun events, fun things, go to schools, and just took off. So they'd given me a 90-day contract when I started the Big Joe on the Go thing. After 4 days, the general manager called me in and slid across the table a 3-year contract to me and said, I had no idea how fantastic this would be after 4 days. And I was like, I kind of told you it'd be great. And then so we kind of went that way. So I did it for 3 years. We had a lot of fun. We met a lot of people. And then one day in the summer of 2006, all the sports people at Channel 2 got different jobs like in the same week. They all went everywhere. And then I do sports. So he called me up and says, hey, I need you to do sports this weekend. And I'm like, gosh, I don't want these. I'll pay extra and all that. So, okay. So I went in, and this was July of 2006, did a sports cast, and I treated it, and not to drop an SNL hint because you're with me, but I treated my sports cast like an SNL weekend update, like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
USA was in the World Cup playing some team, some country I'd never heard of, and I just had fun with that.
Yeah.
So I get off the anchor desk, and he calls me, and I'm seeing my phone ring. I'm like, oh no, this isn't good. And he goes, I haven't laughed or enjoyed a sports cast like that in forever. We need to talk on Monday. And one thing led to another. He put me on the sports desk, and that's how I started. So it all started with a weekend jaunt of having fun. and that's where it stayed for a while. And then I went over to ESPN 102.5 The Game for several years.
Yeah.
And then one night, and I've written about this too, it was a January cold night, 2015. My phone rang at 9:30 at night. And I don't answer my phone if I don't know the number. But Michael, something told me that night to answer the phone. Said, you need to answer the phone. And the good Lord speaking to me. So I picked it up, and it was Rudy Kalis. And he said, hey, Joe, I'm leaving sports. I'm going to the morning show. And, they want me to help pick the replacement. I looked through all these YouTube videos, and I can't find anybody who's as good as you. So you want this job? It's like, yeah. So one thing led to another. That's how I got to Channel 4.
Wow.
And there was a nice run for 6 years. And, once COVID happened, I started doing the Big Joe and the Go thing again. Once COVID happened, it was tough on a lot of journalists. Not woe is me, like, but I was powerless to help you. I'm telling your story, but I can't help you. I can't make you well. I can't bring your dad back. I can't bring your business back. And it was just so tough. And I remember I went to my boss at the time and I said, hey, I really want to do more positive stories. I want to do more stories of people just making it, or just positive, feel-good stories. And in the office, he looked at me and said, that sounds good, but nobody cares. And I knew then that my time at Channel 4 under him was done.
Yeah.
And my time came up in June of 2021. They offered me another year on my contract, but I could not stay under that kind of attitude and not caring about the community. I just couldn't do it. And he ended up leaving like a month after I left. But I'm so glad where I am now, what I'm doing. I had no stress, no pressure in my life. I still get to write for Main Street Media, which I love, and do other things around. So I don't think I've ever been happier, and I've ever been just so more relaxed in my life than I am right now.
I want to talk about Main Street some more. That's a fascinating story, and the timeline, is really cool to be reminded of. I want to tell you personally, thank you for in 2009. I remember specifically that, probably because Greg Ruff gave you a call, but you came out to Ravenwood out there in the Donaldson Hermitage area, and you did a really nice story about the team that I took to the national tournament for NAIA women's golf. We had 4 girls on the team that year. To a variety of circumstances, we only had 4 girls that year, and that meant that literally every stroke counted. In college golf, you have 5 players playing, and you count the 4 low scores. But with only 4 girls, we had to count every stroke round. And we won the Trans-South Conference that year by 1 stroke.
Wow.
We had our conference tournament down at Greystone, down in Dixon, and literally we won it by 1 stroke. It gave us an automatic bid to Rapid City, South Dakota, where the national tournament was held that year. And you came out and you treated us like we really were headed off to a national championship. And we were. It just wasn't like the D1 world. And that was back when Vandy's women were so good,
That's right.
And you were kind to do that story for us. And I know you did the same thing for our softball team a couple of times. I want to talk just a little bit about what's happened to Nashville over the years as it relates to both the sports market and just things in general. When I came to college, Trevecca was a part of a triangle between Lipscomb and Belmont and Trevecca, and we were all kind of they were a little bit bigger than we were, but we were able to compete with them in the sports. And it didn't feel like this huge separation. We didn't have the Titans. We didn't have the Predators. The sports market afforded places like ours to still get, a line or two in the Tennessean, the Banner, or on local sports and things like that. You kept that alive for a lot of people for a little while, even after the major league sports started getting here. And I will always remember that, and I will always treasure that about you. You cared about the local school here that was kind of getting squeezed out in a way, and it wasn't out of pity. It was because it was a good story,
Right.
And you weren't going to let it die.
It was, and that's what I get so upset to do about sports is that.
Joe?
I'm here.
Froze there for a minute.
Like, you're good. I'm still here. There you are.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, there we go. That's the thing is I get my Titans news from ESPN. I got the ESPN app. I read Titans news on there. I'm not following the local news for a 15-second Titans soundbite. So back in the day, my thing was always, if you don't take care of your backyard, you're done. You're done. There are sportscasters around the country who've been fired, and I could go across. It's like Phoenix, Vegas, St. Louis, Detroit, Tampa, Atlanta, West Palm Beach, and parts between, because the sportscasters never left the office. They would just roll on, some NFL feed, and they're like, well, all people care about is the NFL. Well, that's so wrong. You can divert time out for other things. So when you guys do that, or with Trevecca, I met you guys with the softball team, it's a great little story. It's just got to get off your butt and go out and tell it. And now it's done. I mean, they won't get out, and it's not the sportscaster's fault because consultants have squeezed them out and everything. And it's just a shame. And that's why I'm so glad, like, you guys are Trevecca. I know MTSU does this well. UT up in Knoxville does this. You kind of harness your own content and blast it out.
Yeah.
And that way I can see it there. I don't have to rely on Channel 245 or Fox 17 to find that story. I can see what you guys are doing now, and it's great. I go on my phone and find that stuff. So back then, it was like, this is a great story. There's a couple of local girls on this team. The softball team was great because it was like half the team from Middle Tennessee.
Yeah.
And it's just really nice to see that, because you go out on a Titans Tuesday or Wednesday, there's no new news there. There's not the game was on Sunday, and you rehashed everything. And but I don't see TV coming back around, really embracing the local content again. It's sports wise, but I'm glad that you guys, and even the Titans, do this too, and the Predators. You own your own content and you just blast it out there where I can see everything. So I don't get a 15-second soundbite on Channel 4 when I can get a 2-minute story off your website about great things that happen athletically over there. So, but it's just always been fun to take care of the backyard.
That's awesome. I don't know where it happened, but sports on local TV news now, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It might be 4 at the most. Touchdown Fridays or whatever the local channel calls it. And I know you did that forever, getting out. And now maybe this is a good segue now to Main Street. I mean, you have a Friday night high school football show that a lot of people have really gravitated toward. How did that whole Main Street thing kind of pop up?
Yeah, well, this is actually separate from Main Street because this is on 125. Yeah, and so I did this show about 10 years ago over there, and it was great. So once I got on TV, my son set out football this year. I called 102, and we were talking and say, would you be interested in coming back and doing the game blitz? I'm like, absolutely. And then so like, all right, can you do like 9 to 11? I said, no, I want to do 6 to midnight. They're like, well, 6 to midnight, where you get the content? I said, that's not for you to worry about. I'll worry about that. Yeah. And it's been fantastic. High school football has exploded here. And I know you look at people's like, well, nobody cares. Well, that's fine. But there's a lot of people who do care. And Friday nights, and we have like 15 to 18 coaches who come on the show. We get scores. It's just really fun on a Friday night. NFL and college can have every other day. But Friday night, give it to high school. And I tell you, Mike, we've heard from so many people, because that signal on Friday nights goes to a lot of great – we've heard people from almost all over the state on Friday night. And it's been fantastic. And I don't go back to something about TV, about time. When I was at Channel 4, we had a consultant who was terrible. I would have 3 minutes, 4 minutes sometimes. Well, he came up with things, said that I had to go on my sportscast. I had to go fight for my time, which means I had to go to the meeting and fight for my time. So I went to the meeting one day, and all the producers were in there, and they were getting the show log, kind of formatted out. And I brought up, I said, hey, I'm told I'm here to fight for my time. They're like, yeah. And I said, I don't feel like fighting today. You guys can have it. And the producers look at the rundown like, well, how are we going to fill 4 minutes? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, you can figure something out, but I don't feel like fighting today. Like, well, you can't. I said, exactly. Never pigeonhole me. Give me my time. I'll take care of it. I've been fighting for my time every single day since I've been here. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to do this again. I got good content. They're like, okay, it was never a problem again after that. So I always laugh that consultants find a way to kind of screw everything up. And that was kind of the way they want to do that there. And then, they've got their hold on local TV so much and kind of tell people and all this research, what's happening here and there. They don't have a clue. I mean, they don't have, when I'm watching the news and the third story is some story at Chattanooga, I'm like, we got a lot of people living in Middle Tennessee. We should be doing more stories here. And it was always a battle. And I don't think it's ever going to come back, Michael. It's going to take maybe a consultant who really cares about local, and a TV station who cares about local for it to get back where it was. But I think that ship sailed.
I did notice that recently Channel 4 has gone back, and I don't know if somebody convinced them that you remember Hello Nashville, Channel 4 Loves You, that's great. I mean, it was just back when Dan Miller and Demetria and Bill Hall and all of them were a part of that. Rudy. I understand that maybe some other markets use that as well, but I strongly believe in the power of presence in a local context. And even though Nashville has gotten to be this major league city, a third coast, if you will, if we lose the soul of Nashville's uniqueness, then we're just one more big city. And so I talk about that a lot in my work that I do here. I work a lot with local churches of the Nazarene around the Southeast. And I believe, like the Tip O'Neill book, back when he and Ronald Reagan were friends, back when politicians could have wildly different views on certain things and still be friends at the end of the day, that all politics is local. I still think that's kind of true. Now, the media has taken to extremes to keep us divided. But I think if we could find a way to come back together in the middle in a more localized way, I think we'd solve a lot of the global problems a lot easier.
I totally agree. That's the thing is that, we always get so fixated on what's happening in Washington, D.C. I remember a guy a long time ago who told me, he said, hey, you need to pay attention to your councilman. He's the one setting your sanitation rates and your everything, the property value that, and take pride in your community and your neighbors. And I think that's where it starts, is in the community, and it kind of grows organically from there. And the way it's going now is not good at all. It's not good at all. But, somebody said everything's cyclical. I've never seen this kind of rhetoric this bad in my life. And maybe it will go back to being sane again. And hopefully it will. And we can just pray that it does that. But it is, once we look out for each other, and I think there's, I hate to say, not to say this, but there's a lot of good in this world that we don't get to see on TV. There's a lot of good that's happening all over, probably more good happening today than ever at this time in the world. We just don't see it now because we're being fed all the bad things that are happening. And I know we need to know about some of the bad things, and I understand that, but oftentimes we overlook some great things that are going on because we got to put the bad part in there, and that's not good at all.
So you split your time? I mean, the Friday night thing, do you have to do a lot of prep work before you head into that? Or is that, so many coaches and people from all the schools across the state now, content comes to you?
Yeah, it's both. I still prepare the games, what's happening, what's at stake on Friday nights. Some of the old players, and you kind of remember the rivalries and what's happened in those games, and then just kind of focus on what's happening now. And, we made this show kind of fast and fun. If you're out and about for 20 minutes, you can get all the scores you needed, maybe grab an interview or two for somebody. So it's been a lot of fun. And that's the thing. We had a guy at the radio station say, it's easy to cover the NFL or the college because you just Google something, there it is. He goes, but if you're trying to Google, East Nashville Magnet School, you're not going to find a lot when it comes to football or Good Pasture or, Davidson Academy, wherever. You're going to have to really get some legwork going. Yeah. And that's what makes it fun, because you discover all these, cool little facts and people that have been part of this program for years. And so we're just really grateful. A lot of people listen on Friday nights, and it's going great. So I couldn't be more happy with the show.
That's awesome. And I love that you're doing that. Tell me about your daily show that you have that people can watch live or on demand on YouTube.
Yeah, that was our show, Mornings on Main Street. I've actually stepped away from that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, just probably about 3 months ago. and focusing more on more writing and on the high school football show. And I do a lot of freelance PR stuff that's going on, which has been really, really great. Allowed me more chance to write more things and do more things. And it's been a lot of great people. And it's been kind of eye-opening. And the best thing about it was I was able to, hold on, come right back. Don't go anywhere. I was able to, I wrote a book. So
really,
I had some time out. So I wrote a book. I've taken a lot of my newspaper articles, condensed them, and wrote a book. And I got to tell you, Michael, I thought I'd sell 15 copies, maybe, like 10 to my brother and 1 to a couple of my friends here and there. It's done really well. And it's called Create the Chaos. And it's just about when I tried to break into the TV, I couldn't get anywhere. And people tell me, well, you need to do it this way. Well, I did it that way and I got nowhere. And then there's this one guy in the corner says, hey, you need to do it this way, smoking a cigar, drinking a beer, like, hey, follow me. Nobody wants to follow that guy. But the guy was right. And he, ends up leading me down a path. This is hypothetical, leading down a path of like, I got my resume tape out there. I started getting these job offers and my life changed. So what I did, I created this wonderful chaos. So I tell people in your life, if your job's stagnant or you're not getting or you just feel bad, create wonderful chaos. I mean, do different things, write things, start a blog, volunteer, do so much that people notice you and then go to the next level. And it's just a story, a bunch of stories about not being successful, but putting you on a path of feeling good about yourself, being positive. And one of the main things in the book is we need to celebrate each other's success. I need to celebrate your success. I need to celebrate Greg Ruff's success. We need to lift each other up because it kind of manifests each other in our lives. And that's what it was about. So taking my time off from Main Street, I was able to write this, put this together, and it's been wonderful. And, there's part of the book I tell people that, a great parable is, it's this guy going across the desert with his family. He sees a house, it's got a light on, he's hungry, he's knocking on the door, and the homeowner comes down and says, the only reason I'm opening this door is because you won't stop knocking. And I tell people, never stop knocking on the door because they will answer and it will be open for you. So I've been really lucky.
Where is it available on Amazon or?
Yes, sir. Yeah, Amazon, to search my name or Create the Chaos, and there it is. So, had I been full-time over there doing that, I probably wouldn't have done that. And so I had a lot of time to come together, condense all the articles and put them together and put it out there. So I've got another one's coming out next month as well. And just like some good Southern humor and things that are happening that are going around. And it's been really wonderful. I've heard from people that I have no idea who they are from all parts of the country who have emailed me, telling me about my book. And it's been really cool to see that part of it.
What's am I right? You're BigJoeOnTheGo.com. Is that where people?
That's it.
I'm going to pop that
post
up here.
Everything there. Yeah, it's great.
So, and this is where, like, if people want to go to kind of check out all your other writings, they can.
Yeah, everything's there.
BigJoeOnTheGo.com.
Yes, sir. There it is. Yeah.
Before we go, I've got a couple of just general questions about things that have kind of jumped out at you while you've been doing what you do. Tell me, give me 2 or 3 personalities that you've met over the years that maybe are really cool stories. I mean, like people that maybe you thought wouldn't want to give you the time of the day that surprised you with how nice they were. We don't, we'll keep it friendly. We won't tell any stories about people who are total jerks, but tell me about some cool things that have happened to you along the way.
I had to cover the CMT Awards years ago, and because we had like half the staff off the channel too, so I went down to cover the CMT Awards. And the story that day was every presenter on stage gets kind of that swag bag. Got boots, a Palm Pilot at the time, and all these great things. So I'm day before the big event. I'm backstage. This guy walks up and says, "Hey, these boots would look good on you." And I look over, and it's William Shatner, right?
Oh, right.
So it's me and my camera guy and William Shatner in this room. And I'm thinking, you didn't have camera. I don't think you take a selfie or anything like that. And I was like, hey, man, my first reaction was TJ Hooker because That says TJ Hooker. And he's like, yeah, he goes, I never get that. I always get Star Trek. I'm like, yeah, I love TJ Hooker. And all of a sudden he goes, you want these boots? And there were boots in there, my size, like $600. And so I'm not a presenter. He takes a bag, grabs the boots, puts them in a bag and says, well, you're a presenter now. And he hands me this. I mean, we probably $1,000 worth of stuff. And I'm like, I can't take this. He's like, I ain't telling anybody. I was like, okay. He was wonderfully gracious. I mean, it's TJ Hooker to me that was standing there. It was just a lot of fun. Another guy that some people, that I know they don't like him, but, Kid Rock has been, the times I've dealt with him have been fantastic. And, I got a tip one time that, Kid Rock had paid off, I think it was like $88,000 in layaway at a Walmart of Dickerson Pike.
Wow.
And, I got a tip that he was going to be over there, and I went over there and he was there, and he's like, hey man, do me a favor. And I said, yeah. He's like, I don't want the story to be told. And I said, but you're doing he's like, I don't want it to be told. He goes, it'll get out on its own. He goes, but I don't want it to be told. And in the middle of this, one of the ladies who he paid off for layaway just came up bawling and everything. And to watch him being so gracious with this lady and make sure she had a Christmas. But I got cold chills right now thinking about that moment, which was really cool. And I know he's volatile and people don't like, and I get all that. But to see it in that moment of just a man giving back was really cool. And those are the two things that they're completely different, but they stand out in so many ways. I've run sports figures throughout the year. I ran the Shack downtown. He was fantastic. He was so gracious. Took pictures. They say he's 7'1" or whatever. He's every bit of 10 feet tall. He's just gigantic. And he was so nice taking pictures with a lot of people. And there's been other people's, Ron Jaworski's one that's weird. I ran to Ron Jaworski downtown one time, and I had to leave because he wouldn't shut up. I mean, he was so great talking football. Yeah. And, everything was just so wonderful at that. So, but the Kid Rock story and the William Shatner one are the ones that kind of stand out to me.
The common thread in those stories was generosity. And
yeah, right.
As you may know, that's something that I studied, and did a degree, doctoral degree dissertation on generosity and satisfaction with life and commitment to an organization. But it was all driven from just studying generosity at its core. And you have been the epitome of a generous spirit in this town for all these years. And even though, we don't hang out a lot, maybe we can change that. Maybe we'll meet up at Fletcher's and
there you go
or something. But Joe, I love your generous heart toward people. And I think one of the things that we're struggling with in our society, and one of the things that makes it so challenging right now to find any common ground, is that we think if we give up anything at all for the sake of someone else, then we're losing a part of ourselves. And in fact, when we make a gesture toward another, we're actually becoming, in my view, more of what we were created to be in the first place, and which is for the good of one another and for the good of the world. And as Christians, that's the heart of the message. But generosity works, period. I don't have to offer a lot of caveats past that. And I thank you so much for sharing these stories of generosity. And do you still have the boots? Do you still have the William Shatner boots?
I do, and they're in the storage room. Yeah, they're really tight. They don't fit my big fat foot anymore, but I do have those, and they're great. And I will tell you this. I tell I used to end the show, and I write this too, a lot of places, and I tell people, and it takes a minute to kind of figure it out. And I tell them, no one ever went broke by giving.
Yeah,
no one has ever gone broke by giving, and so it takes, for some people, it's like, what, and they finally get it, and it's like, oh yeah, you're right, and so. It doesn't take a lot to give back. You just got to do it, and that's it. And so generosity is at the core of everything. Whether we one time adopting we did a lot with animal shelters and helping adoptions, and I'd get emails from people about how the dog has changed their life, and I was like, no, I was just put in a place to be a conduit between A to B that you guys could meet, and I love the fact I was able to facilitate that. that I removed myself from the situation, and that those two parties can celebrate what they've done, and especially with animal rescues and all that, have been great. So anytime that you could push it a little bit forward, and keep pushing it a little bit forward is great. So I appreciate the kind words. That means a lot.
Well, you've been great hanging out with you here today, and we're recording on October the 26th, and again, thinking kind thoughts about your remembrance of your mom yesterday. I hope people will go to bigjoeonthego.com and read some of the things that you've shared. You are a terrific storyteller, and you have the capacity to share real human emotion with your writing. You can tell you're not writing to impress, you're just writing to share. And
yeah, I wrote one. I had a friend of mine, and I'll leave you this. He had took care of his father for like 2 years, and his father passed away, and he's with him like 24/7. And he said, I don't know what I'm doing with my time now. And and that was the thing with my brother and I. We would switch off taking care of my mother for several years, and she passed on a Sunday. And so every Friday we would meet up, my brother and I, at the nursing home just for 30 minutes, maybe eat something real quick, talk to see each other, kind of, make sure we're both sane on the same level. So she passed away on a Sunday. We buried her on a Thursday. And that Friday I was working at Channel 2. I did the 6 o'clock sportscast. I got in my car and I drove to the nursing home. And I sat there and waited. And so I called my brother and I said, "Where are you? Are you here?" He's like, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm at the nursing home to see Mom." I'll never forget, Michael. He's like, Mom passed away. And it just like, you have this muscle memory, right? Yeah. Of just going. And I wrote the story last week, and it's simply called, "Hey, where are you?" And I've heard from so many people that were in the same boat, that you just kind of get lost in doing that job of taking care of a loved one, whether it's your mom, dad, wife, brother, sister, whatever. And I've heard from so many people how they were in the same boat. And I got to tell you, I don't write it for money. I don't write it for a pat on the back. But when you see these messages come in, and sometimes there's 100 of them come in, and people telling you that how that story moved them and made them feel, I don't know how to react. It's amazing. It's an amazing, warm feeling to let people know that something you've written that they can relate to and care about. And it's been just a wonderful thing. So the writing has been therapeutic for me in so many ways, and I'm glad other people have seen it that way too. So thank you.
Well, I know you have a meeting to get to here at the top of the hour, but Joe, thanks so much, buddy, for joining me here. And
sure, thank you.
You guys go look for "Create the Chaos" by Joe Dubin, available on Amazon, or also available at bigjoeonthego.com.
There you go.
It's been great. All the best to you, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Michael, thank you. I really appreciate you. Thank you.